Welcome to Toffee TV. Delighted to say I'm joined by Joshua Barrie from the Rangers Review. We're going to talk about Nathan Patterson, who has left Rangers today to join Everton Football Club. Joshua, welcome, mate. Hope you're well.
Yeah, good to be here. Good to be talking about an amicable transfer. It really happens in football. So thanks for having me on.
That's an absolute pleasure. What is the feeling like amongst Rangers fans tonight? Obviously, Nathan Patterson, very highly rated young fullback. So what is the feeling like that he's left the club to join Everton?
Really mixed. On one hand, you have the reality that, Rangers' best youth prospect in however many years has only played 25 times for the first team. And there's a real feeling, I guess, with some supporters of missed opportunity. I think there's always that recognition that he had the talent to go and play in the English Premier League. Rangers supporters know and understand the club constantly speaks about a player trading model. People aren't under illusions about that. So there is that element to it. Equally, there's a recognition that you're selling a player for £16 million who's made 2 starts in the league. And if you look at it from the cold light of day, in that sense, it's a good deal. It's a good deal for all parties. I think it's a fair price for a player that, although he hasn't played that much for the Rangers first team, is good enough to be a first choice international. And although Patterson hasn't played as much as he'd have wanted for the first team at Rangers, he has won the 55th league title, which is one of, if not the most important title in the club's history. So he certainly goes having made that big achievement along the way. So I'd say mixed, amicable, but it's a deal that suits all parties. And I think when that happens in football, you've got to look at it objectively and think this is good for the club and good for the player, and ultimately, it's a good deal in that sense.
In terms of him, obviously he hasn't played that much for Rangers and certainly hasn't got in to the side as often as he'd like this season. I've seen some people saying, well, if he's that good, why hasn't he been able to get him instead of James Tavernier? But he's been brilliant form, hasn't he, Tavernier, for Rangers, club captain, scores goals, assists, everything else. So is it more of kind of testament to how good he's been, as opposed to Patterson maybe not being good enough to replace him?
100%. I think you could certainly make the argument that James Tavernier has been Rangers' best and most important player for the past 3-4 seasons, certainly up there. And it's a really unique situation. If Nathan Patterson played 10 of the other 11 positions on the pitch, he would have been in the Rangers first team throughout the entirety of last season. And when he did come into the first he made a big impact. But you've got this unique situation where Rangers can get value out of Patterson in a way they can't out of Tavernier. Tavernier is committed his long-term future to the club at Rangers. He's the captain, and he's too important and he's too good in terms of what he contributes to be phased out. He's 30, and again, from an outside view, you think, well, phase out the 30-year-old, play the 19-year-old that's supposedly a generational talent from the academy. But Tavernier's availability is remarkable. The amount of games he's played for Rangers, over 300 now since he came to the club about 5 years ago, is really impressive. So it's a completely unique situation. The conversation about playing them both has been muted a lot, but the system, certainly under Steven Gerrard, was so based around James Tavernier's best qualities. He was the top scorer at the club last season. So it's a unique situation, and I'm sure no Rangers supporter will be surprised when Nathan Patterson, inevitably in my mind, goes on to quite soon become the first choice right back at Everton. You see him playing for Scotland, how quickly he's taken to that field and adapted to it. James Tavernier's an excellent player, Rangers captain, arguably one of the top, if not the top 2-3 most important players at the club. And it was always, that was the player Patterson couldn't quite dislodge. If you take the value out of it, and Tavernier could have been sold. If say he was 25, it might have been a different conversation. He's at a stage of his career where he'll now play the next 3-4 years for Rangers. Rangers can get this value out of Nathan Patterson just now, and a player that would inevitably go to the Premier League, I think, just goes a little bit sooner. So yeah, completely unique situation, and not at all a reflection of Nathan Patterson not being able to get into the Rangers team.
I mean, yeah, it's kind of how I've seen how important he is, and just looking at Tavernier's numbers, it's incredible and what he's done there. In terms of Nathan Patterson, then, how good can he be? Because obviously, with such a short sample size, like we've got in terms of games, obviously we haven't seen much of him, certainly down here. You obviously have seen a lot of those games. So how good do you think he can be as a footballer?
I think you've got a pretty good, in Scotland we seem to be really good now at producing fullbacks, and you look at the Andy Robertson, Kieran Tierney kind of example that's been set, and I see absolutely no reason why Nathan Patterson can't reach the level of those two players. The reason being he's broken through and played in Scotland and at an international level younger than Robertson. Tierney had a similar breakthrough but didn't have the situation that we've just discussed ahead of him, preventing him from having a few years in the Celtic first team before he moved down south. So I think in terms of his performance ceiling, if you will, no Rangers fan will be surprised when he inevitably goes on to have a really successful career in the English Premiership, and as I say, reaches the level of those two players. And again, you look at the fact that he's a first choice for his country at 19, and this is a Scotland team that, as has been seen recently, is better than has been in the past. So I think you have a player with loads and loads of ability, loads of potential, a lot of raw potential in terms of his pace and his one-on-one ability and all of these types of things. You also have a player that has shown quite a lot of mental resolve to come back from a difficult situation last year where there was a COVID protocol was broken, and 20 seconds after coming onto the pitch, following breaking that protocol, he scored a really important goal in Europe. So I think mentality-wise, he's been chucked into Old Firm games as well. He has that to match his ability, and at just 19, he's achieved quite a lot, albeit with less game time than he'd like. So certainly the Robertson Tierney bracket is something he's not that far away from when you see them play together at international duty, and I'm sure a level he'll consistently reach over the next few years for Everton.
Is that, I mean, that you've just mentioned there, I was going to ask you about that in terms of what he brings to Everton, but is it that pace? Is he quick? He seems very comfortable in possession of the football. So are they two of the attributes in attack and fullback that Everton are getting?
Yeah, very much so. In some senses, you regard him as a kind of classic modern fullback in terms of very comfortable on the last line of attack, running in behind, breaking lines, really good one-on-one. He has ability to cut inside or go around, so he's quite unpredictable. And what you'll see him do a lot is feint to take a cross and kind of cut in field, and he's comfortable making those inside runs, which is, as you're seeing, I think, across a lot of football, it is really valuable, but he's also comfortable going around the side. And using his pace in that way. Defensively, really sound. Again, one of the first games that he was chucked into at Rangers was a away trip to Slavia Prague in the Europa League, where he put in a really good defensive performance. The system that Rangers used under Steven Gerrard, which you now see at Aston Villa, puts a lot of emphasis on the fullbacks offensively, but also gives them a lot of responsibility defensively. It's not an easy role to play whatsoever, and he took to that really impressively. So I think you, again, you look at that Tierney Robertson model and Patterson similar in many ways. I think actually as a one-on-one threat, he's almost better will become better because he has more variables in terms of being able to cut inside. His combination play for me has improved. He played at left back recently, and although he's less comfortable on his left foot, he has quite good positional sense, I think, to adapt to that. So you get a player with, again, a lot of really exciting variables. Someone whose combination play has improved, can be that. I'm sure can play as a wing back as well as a full back, but is really solid and sound defensively. Good size about him. I'm sure he'll bulk up over the next few years going to the Premiership. But yeah, a lot of exciting variables.
Sorry, Josh, one sec. Can you hear that replaying? Can you hear anything other than me at the moment? No. Josh, can you hear anything other than me speaking right now? No.
No,
because I can hear our conversation playing again at the very start. So it's playing in the background somewhere there. Right, it stopped. Oh my God, no, because it'll be Josh when Josh was answering. That's why.
I've got nothing. There's nothing playing. There's no.
All right. Well, as long as it's not, as long we've got Josh's audio, it's fine. I'll just think. Right, I'll just carry on then. Okay. Yeah, sound. I'll just pick up again, Josh. That was excellent. Just pick up on this. So, I mean, that sounds all very exciting. I'll be honest there. What you're saying there, it's something Everton have missed. Obviously, Seamus Coleman is 33 now and he's had a bad injury and he's still a decent player, but we need that youthful energy and certainly someone who's pacey and likes to get forward. So all of that, what you're saying, I think we'll have Evertonians very pleased indeed. Another young player we were linked with, I just wanted to see how you think he compares, is Calvin Ramsey at Aberdeen. So they're both obviously young right fullbacks. Ramsey a little bit younger than Patterson. How do you think Patterson kind of lines up against Ramsey?
Yeah, a lot of comparisons have been made between them. Ramsey has some really impressive underlying numbers, and again, he's not had the challenge ahead of him that Patterson has had. So he's been able to play a lot of football for Aberdeen this season, and Ramsey, I'd imagine, will be someone that follows him down south at some point. He's not had the international call up yet, which probably tells you slightly behind Patterson in terms of his development. But again, another really exciting player that fits that mould, another fullback that is not dissimilar to the ones that have come before him. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes. Certainly, some people have muted that he would replace Patterson at Rangers. I don't see that as a real goer at all, because the reason that Patterson has left obviously is partly because of the limitations of first team football as a right back at Rangers. But yeah, another exciting player for the national team, and I'm sure you've seen Scotland work a system to fit Tierney and Robertson just now, and it might well be that they have to do that for Ramsey and Patterson going forward in the future.
Yeah, I mean, the bits I've seen of Ramsey looks really exciting as well. But for the purpose of this, and for me being a little bit biased, I'm going to say Patterson's better because obviously he's joining Everton now. So there you go. Finally, Joshua, then before I let you go, do you see Nathan Patterson just progressing, becoming a better player because he's playing in the Premier League without being obviously disrespectful to the Scottish League? The Premier League is one of the big leagues around Europe. Do you think Nathan Patterson has got it in his locker to comfortably fit in and progress and do really well in the Premier League?
Yeah, again, we're talking in hypotheticals, but you look at the situation where there's a clear pathway for him to play first team football, a good professional in front of him to learn with and alongside. You look at the assets he has, as I've mentioned already. You look at the way that he conducted himself last year when he had a difficult time off the pitch and responded really well on it. And I think he has all the kind of mental and physical attributes to become a really, really top player. And although the appeal is there for Patterson to move to the Premier League, it's a not so much a risk, but it's a brave thing to do as a 19-year-old. I'm sure all of us would do that, but he's leaving his boyhood club early, making a big move. And I've no doubt, and I'm sure that a lot of the Rangers support who will all be cheering him on and wishing him well, that he'll go on and have a really, really, really good career in England and for the national team, and maybe one day end up back at Rangers to get a little bit more game time. He won't have James Tavernier ahead of him at that stage, but listen, he'll go on to be a better player than James Tavernier in the future. This is just I think a unique situation, a good deal by the club. Ross Wilson said today he's been speaking to Bill Kenwright for a number of weeks about it. It's obviously been done in the right manner, that Rangers are happy with the price. The player can go and play football in it, and as I've said throughout, it's a deal that works for both parties.
Yeah, and obviously continuing the Everton Rangers links, we've had quite a lot, Duncan Ferguson, Stephen Naismith, Nikita Jelavic, Mo Johnson, if you want to go back, Paul Rideout. There's a lot of players. I'm sure I've missed a few as well. There's a lot of players. Alec Cleland, there's another one that comes to mind. So a lot of players have swapped the Rangers blue for the Everton blue, and that link continuing today. Joshua, listen, thanks so much for taking time out. I know this took a little bit longer than it should have done, but thank you very much for making yourself available and having a really good chat. And listen, hopefully we can do this later on in the season. We'll have a little catch up and tell you how he's doing in the blue of Everton.
Absolutely. Hopefully the performance is upturned slightly. I'm sure Patterson can only help in that regard.
Absolutely. Listen, all the best for the rest of the season. Check out Joshua on the Rangers Review. Have a look out there for his work on that, and good luck to Rangers for the rest of the season. Thanks for joining us, Josh.
Cheers, guys.
Take care. Cheers, pal. Thank you very much there to Joshua Barrie from the Rangers Review, giving us the lowdown on Everton's new signing, Nathan Patterson, who's joined the club from Glasgow Rangers. See you later.